Karen, tell us what we should know, what you know.
Gosh, would take a while. I'm Karen Michele ROZIER, and I'm going to spell my middle name Michele. And I'm spelling it because there's this thing called innocent mistake, and we all want to believe innocent mistakes. And so we give our bankers and we give the people that we work with the benefit of the doubt. Now, I literally am not supposed to be here. I'm very happy to be in Santa Maria. This place is beautiful. But right now, I'm supposed to be in Patuxent River, Maryland, and I'm supposed to be our nation's chief engineer for air-to-ground missiles. That's basically, I'm supposed to be the head rocket scientist in charge of all legacy missiles that are dropped from airplanes to the ground. Instead of me having that job as being the chief rocket scientist for the Navy, I was recently convicted in Los Angeles as a con artist. Instead of being the person who I am, which is an educated black woman, they convicted me without evidence. They convicted me without allowing me to speak. They excluded my transcripts. They excluded all of my academic background, my publications, people who knew me. And they had a sham trial. They put a jury in a room that was about 45 degrees. And in less than 20 minutes, the jury came back and said that I was guilty. And what was interesting is that I thought I had lawyers. I thought I hired the Cochran firm, and I found out things about people who are pretending to be judges because I thought it was a judge that was sitting there. But then when I pulled the oath of office, I discovered that she didn't take the correct oath of office. I've discovered that the lawyers weren't who they said they were, and we're going after them. And with less than 20 minutes, they convicted me. And at the time, the public defender who was representing me after the Cochran firm took all of our money, leans over to me and says, "Oh, wow, this has been great because, my son works for Bank of America right down the street." And my jaw hit the ground because I've been suing Bank of America for over 2 years. I've got a $6 million lawsuit against them. And I literally lost a hearing because the presiding judge over the criminal case wouldn't contact the presiding judge in Orange County to have the hearing delayed. I've been suing U.S. Bank. I've been suing MERS. And I actually started suing back in 2008. I sued GMAC Mortgage, Electronic Services, and I also sued Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems. And what I claimed is that Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems was not a legal entity in the state of California. I claim that there are millions of mortgages that in California, and that California has a very unique problem. Now, we all know nationwide about the problem with MERS being a database and saying they have vice presidents, etc. But in California, they had no agent for proof of service. They were not recognized by the Department of Corporations. So when these companies was putting MERS on their deed of trust, they didn't exist. So after my suit came out, GMAC dismissed all of the foreclosures. They threw me out of federal court. They said, "Hey, we're not even trying to sell our house," and the judges dropped the case. MERS was quietly removed from millions of mortgages across California. All of a sudden, instead of MERS being the beneficiary, Bank of America for LaSalle Bank or these different places with LaSalle Bank were your beneficiary. But my question is, I asked them, I said, "You guys ever heard of the show Remington Steele?" Mm-hmm. And that's what I said. There is no provision in California law for Remington Steele companies. You cannot create a contract with a non-existent company and then 10 years later, a new person take that name and assume those contracts. There is absolutely no provision in California law.
That is such good news.
Exactly. So the
good
fact,
job,
so when I looked at this, I said, look at the deed of trust. Look at your deed of trust the day you sign it, and you start looking at all of the companies, all of the people that signed it. And what I discovered is that the only two people the only organizations that existed was Karen and Michele ROZIER and WMC Mortgage, which was shut down by the government. GE Money actually shut them down. But when I tried to sue GE Money, the government told me they didn't know who they were. Well, apparently they're a Chinese company, and I'm still trying to chase that down. So it's a lot of craziness going on. I am still being suing GMAC Mortgage. They were in New York. I've chased them in New York. I'm suing U.S. Bank. I'm suing Bank of America here in California. And these lawyers who say they're lawyers, I'm finding out you have people that they've infected our law firms. Brian Cave LLP is the nation's 25th largest law firm, but they're actually a United Kingdom law firm, and their headquarters are in St. Louis. So why are they here in California doing so much business if they're not a California law firm? You have Severson and Weirson, who goes into court all the time and says, hey, I'm representing U.S. Bank, or hey, I'm representing this other bank, but yet all of their bills are going back to New York and they're billing residential capital. And so I wrote a letter to the judge and say, how is this not false billing? Or how is it not fraudulent concealment if they're telling me they're representing U.S. Bank but billing residential capital? And oh, by the way, when I go in a bankruptcy court and I face a judge by the name of Catherine Bauer, and I have a motion and it's put forward by Bank of America, and I ask the question, wait a minute, Catherine Bauer, wasn't she head of Bank of America's bankruptcy department for 15 years? She was the head corporate attorney for their bankruptcy department. Why is she presiding over relief from stay motions? Better yet, before she became a federal judge, why is it that she worked on the commission to make it easier for banks to get relief from stay, to make it harder for you homeowners to keep your houses? And how is it legal that she's allowed to preside over your relief from stay motion from Bank of America? Well, the very next day, while I'm in bankruptcy, Bank of America sells my house to U.S. Bank, so now it's no longer U.S. Bank doing it. They moved me into a Chapter 7 as opposed to a Chapter 13, so now it's a different, there's no relief of stay motion. We can go ahead and sell your house. So Bank of America sold my house. They forgot that they sold it to U.S. Bank.
Thank you.
Yeah, they forgot. Yeah. So I sued them all, and they gave me back my house. And so I continued to sue them. And I continue to sue them because they were just wrong. And we're in appeals court. And so, and I keep talking about innocent mistake. And part of it was because when I looked at it, they spelled my middle name Michelle. And I'm going, whoa, that's not my middle name. I would never misspell my middle name. My mother would kill me. I would not do it. Anybody has a weird name, you know how your mother is. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I kept saying, well, maybe it's a mistake, but you know what? Notaries don't make mistakes. I looked at my file. There were too many times where my name was forged. There were too many wrong players. So I took it to appeals court, and I'm arguing in front of the BAP. And the judges are sitting there saying, well, you got a restraining order in California, and you've actually won your case in California. And if we rule in your favor that we're going to take your house from you. So you have a choice. You can have your $1 million house free and clear and be quiet, or you continue. You do understand that we could take your house from you. And I stood there and I said, well, you know what, Your Honor, because I haven't really introduced myself. I am a Harvard Kennedy Fellow. I was the first black female admitted into the Harvard Kennedy School of Government Science, Technology, and Public Policy program. So I met John F. Kennedy Jr., and at the time I wasn't sure if I was the right person because I am an engineer, and he said, no, you are the right person to do this. We haven't made a mistake, that you should be here because you're going to go out and do good. But after I left Harvard, I went back into engineering because I just felt more comfortable with engineering. So to me, this whole thing has forced me to do the work that I was supposed to do. And that's what I told him. I said, you know what? I can get another $1 million, but I have to speak for the millions of Americans who are being robbed.
Thank you, Karen.
That's what I said that. And then the judges, and they all applauded, and they nodded their head, and then they ruled against me. And I said, what the heck is going on? So I said, well, let's look at these judges. Well, who was the presiding judge but a judge who was under investigation, Kirshner, for apparently there was some big dispute up in wherever his state was, and he presided over the case, and he ruled in favor it awarded $21 million to his former law partners. How is that legal? So again, I continue to complain. So U.S. Bank's lawyers took out a restraining order against me after I threatened to send them to jail. And I'm going, how is that illegal? So I go and investigate, and I discover that the judge who's presiding was a criminal judge down in Santa Ana by the name of Scott Steiner, who was moved up the. Oh, you know him? Yes, exactly. And this judge, during the entire 3-day hearing, refused to put his name up, wouldn't tell us his name. It wasn't until we got the signed order. And I know we can't say certain things because of this, but I'm thinking, so you know who he is, but he's accused of moral turpitude crimes. And I'm thinking, how is he allowed to preside over cases where someone's accused of a moral turpitude crime because the guy is foul?
Yeah, be careful now. Okay.
So I complained to the Judicial Commission. I wrote a formal complaint, and they say, well, that has no impact. We don't really think that, they ruled in his favor and said, oh, no, he's a good guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, we're going to have to move on, but I thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
A Harvard graduate, people. A Harvard graduate. And she did get her house back. She engineered a way to get her house back. But we have to move on because we're halfway through the show. And I'm glad you didn't mention the specific moral turpitude because we want to keep this available for children to learn because kids in high school, you need to pay attention because one day you might be facing these things. Next on our list here, next to her is David. Can we have a hand for David? David, give us your qualifications.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I want to talk about Kamala Harris. The banks are still dual tracking. I'm going up and down the California coastline in the courts, helping friends defend their homes. On my own case, just a few weeks back, I was in the Santa Barbara court. My attorney read the judge the Bill of Rights. She turned her head and still ruled for the banks. Oh. And I have my family, my partner and I have $10 million worth of Washington Mutual loans that were supposedly taken over by Chase. 2005, they were ordered by the OCC to cease and desist. They wrote our loans in 2007. My WAMU representative computer would go make a ringing noise on the 11th month to refinance on the 12th month and keep us in the pay option arm loan rate. 2008, the Congress outlawed pay option arm liar loans. We were stuck holding the bag. Well, when the OCC, FDIC shut down WAMU in late 2008, my friend, who I've known for 30 years, worked with Washington Mutual. He called and said, David, the OCC, FDIC is shutting the bank down in 1 week. Come get all 6 of your property folders. I told him he was out of his mind. I keep good records and I have copies of everything. And he said, get your tail down here, pick them up. I did, threw them on the top shelf of my office, went on to fight a foreclosure, had a securitization auditor called U.S. Loan Auditors do an audit. And they came on my computer, shared the screen, showed TILIA, RESPA, HUD, Truth in Lending, Regulation Z, all these violations. And they said, David, where's the note? I go, I know what a note is. It's called an affidavit or adjustable rate note writer. He goes, that's not the note. You send the banks a certified return receipt request for a certified notarized copy of the original note, deed of trust, and the accounting. I was dealing with the modification department, so instantly the letter went out. 24 hours later, a fax came through my machine it was a affidavit of lost note for $2.2 million, 30 days after it was originated. Well, I'm sitting there, I hang up the phone with U.S. Legal, look at the top shelf, and I pull one of those bank folders I went down and got. I look in there, and there's the deed of trust on the back page. The public needs to know this. The banks printed the paper, they put a stamp on it, and blank endorsement. It says, for deposit only, without recourse, Cynthia A. Riley, Vice President, Washington Mutual Bank. So essentially what they did is they printed a check, deposited in their bank account, sold it to Wall Street. They turned it to mortgage-backed security bonds. They took out insurance 10 times it would fail, collected it 10 times the insurance money, sold all those mortgage-backed security bonds to all 50 states in the United States. And guess who bought them? The government employees. And guess what they're worth? Nothing.
Nothing.
They all lost their retirement pension plan. And the people need to know this.